Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Empowered Musician of the Month. We have Theodora Ivanova Nestorova here with us, and she's a Bulgarian British American soprano, researcher, and teacher. She's currently pursuing her PhD at McGill University School of Music, and she holds her master's degrees in vocal pedagogy and music education from New England Conservatory, and she also has her bachelor's in music performance from Oberlin. So she's been all over. She has been recognized all over with many amazing awards. She's the 2018 and 2019 Fulbright Scholar, Fulbright Study Research Grant recipient, and she's won several prizes, including the Pan American Vocology Association Best Student Presentation in 2020. And she does really awesome research, and she's won competitions and lots of awards. So I want to hear a little bit more from you, Theodora. Please let us know what you're about and maybe some recent engagements that you've been doing.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you. That's a very kind introduction. When I hear these things, I'm just hearing all the things that I like to do, and I like to do a lot of different things. So that's why, that's what fuels me, is kind of passion and drive and curiosity, really. So I suppose in the last year, I was grateful to be able to keep presenting. So my main body of research that I'm currently diving deep into in my PhD as well is vocal vibrato variability, as well as Slavic lyric diction and repertoire, and now deep into the biomechanics and underpinnings of vocal vibrato and how it works not only acoustically but also physiologically. So last summer, I got to present where my research is currently at in my PhD and continuing at the National Association for Teachers of Singing conference in Chicago at NATS, and I was grateful that they thought it interesting enough and engaging and to give me the best poster paper award. So actually, I'm currently in the midst of working on putting that together as a paper. I have one that has been submitted and accepted to the Journal of Voice, which is the foremost journal for the Voice Foundation, and will be published soon. So that's exciting as first author. And then I just have so many papers to write, as a PhD life is, from that, and my own studies, and continuing parallel to that, correlating career wise, as my dear mentor and lifelong teacher Dana Varga always says, I have a soprano cello duo called Pizzicanto. Silly, but it's true. So we are doing a music for food fellowship, artist fellowship this year as well. So amidst working on my PhD stuff, doing those papers up in Montreal, I travel to Boston as well, and I collaborate with my partner Alex Fowler, who's a cellist, and we go around and do outreach schools, working on presenting about food insecurity and also performing our own arrangements, compositions for soprano and cello. And we're doing that this year as well. And Music for Food is an amazing organization based in Boston as well. So that, and yeah, several other things too at the same time. So yeah, busy, but happy.
Wow, you are just doing so many amazing things, and it's so cool to see someone young doing it. And I'm wondering if you've always just like had this drive and this passion to do more than the traditional vocal tract.
Yeah. Yes, I think that I have. I think actually, so I mentioned Dana Varga. I've been studying with her now for 10 years, really. She's my really, truly lifelong mentor and teacher, and I'm so grateful for that. But I think the reason why I've been studying for so long, other than that she's amazing, is because we're very similar in that sense that as soon as I started with her when I was 15, I uh, I knew that only taking lessons and just singing and performing was not enough for me. I not didn't sufficiently fill my cup, right? So I always was really interested in all of the pedagogical knowledge she had to give me. She would recommend a lot of books and resources. I would go elsewhere and, join the conferences, voice teaching, voice science conferences, vocology stuff, and read. I'm a voracious reader too, so I really am seeking the how and the why always. And singing, I love it and I loved it, but it never and still is never just the only thing that I can focus on. I say when I do a little too much of this, then I'm like, oh, I want to go, research something or write something. Or when I do a little too much of that, I'm like, I would love to work on a new piece and sing and perform it on stage. Or when I, have a lot of teaching to do, I'm like, I really want to figure out why the student is struggling with this, and myself as well. I want to go figure that out. So it's like it's this variety that has always fueled me, and I don't think that's changed. It's always been that way since the beginning.
I love that. And I think a lot of singers kind of feel that need for balance in their lives. I think, especially when you're in conservatory, it's, one thing all the time. And I love how you've shown, you can be really successful and multifaceted. So that's awesome. I'm wondering how you've gone about your research and like how it connects to your singing. Is there like have you always been interested in the vibrato research, or has it been something that you've learned from teaching? Like, how do all of your correlating careers work together?
Yeah, I think they have all, fed one another. So I was always interested in vibrato. I mean, vibrato is just interesting. It's that stylistic element, that artistic element, but also it's very much technical. So, and we still don't know a lot about it. So that's why. Also, plug if you want to learn more. There's a lot of work that's being currently done in the vibrato research and applied to pedagogy sphere. In March 19th, there's a Nats chat. They do Nats chats every month or so. And this month we have one specifically for vibrato, myself and some amazing colleagues that I look up to, who have written about vibrato. So that's going to be on March 19th if anybody wants to check that out. We're going to be talking all about vibrato. So you'll hear more then, but the TLDR is basically that I think for me in singing different styles, singing different repertoires, teaching that as well. For a lot of us, we're not going to, yes, I'm predominantly classically trained, but a lot of the students that I had coming to me weren't, and didn't want to be. So that was something that I just was very curious about and interested how it varied by genre. For me, how it varied from like opera to art song to, I sing a lot of kind of Slavic folk songs, so to that genre. And I wanted to discover more about it, and it continually does have an element in all of my teaching and all of my singing. And because I'm thinking about it so much and researching it, it comes up again and again. Like this past fall, I was in a world premiere opera, Dean Bray's Il Giudizio di Pigmalione. I was singing Galatea, and at the end she has this. It's a contemporary opera, just written. Really, really great work, really thought-provoking. And Galatea has this cadenza aria, this like a cappella, nothing underneath you. And it's as if she is giving a speech, a feminist speech, and releasing herself from Pygmalione. And there's so much the way that Dean Bury wrote it, and I was able to talk with him. That's the great thing about working with living composers. I was able to talk with him about how he wrote it and how the rhetoric of the speech, shaped the melody and everything that he was envisioning. And I was standing up there on stage and performing it through this, and I like in the moment of performing it, I realized that I had done it in completely different ways in all of the rehearsals and all of the performances, because it was that element of using heightened speech, emotional speech, expressive speech as a singing tool in written out kind of notated thing that varied so much because of vibrato. And so I had never used vibrato in the same way, in the same measure at one time. That had always been the factor that was varied. So it was a really cool light bulb moment while I was singing on stage and doing all these things, and performing and acting, that I realized that vibrato was at the forefront of this piece.
Oh, that's so cool. What a fun discovery.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned some of like your Slavic inspirations and influences in your career, and this is kind of a loaded question, but I'm wondering how your identity has kind of shaped your career and if it's influenced you in any ways. Also, I know being a woman in STEM can be sometimes difficult. I'm wondering how these have shaped your career.
Yeah, those are great questions. I'm a third culture kid, which basically means that you have a culture, you weren't born in it, you were raised in a different culture, in a third culture. So I was born in the UK, but my parents and my whole family are 100% Bulgarian, and I'm a dual citizen with Bulgaria as well. Moved around a lot as a kid, ended up being raised in the United States, but the common thread throughout all of that has always been my Bulgarian culture. So I feel very much internally Bulgarian and externally maybe not. I don't know, but yeah, I that has always been a thing that you can't escape from. I've never wanted to escape from it, and it definitely fuels my artistry. So with the repertoire and works that I like to perform, and even things that this kind of artistic area of research that I'm continuing with lyric diction and repertoire, I always come back to Eastern European and Slavic works, especially those from women composers and poets, because actually it's something that a lot of people don't know, is that a lot of Eastern European culture in the way that it is, and especially sociopolitically, through the oppression that they've gone through, women have not been as elevated in the art sphere as in a lot of other cultures. So it's still a very kind of patriarchal society, and there's a lot that strong. But the other thing that we know, I will say, like the other thing that we know that is in our society and kind of we see in even pop culture, like My Big Fat Greek Wedding, for example, is that Slavic Eastern European women have a lot of strong, like there's a lot of strength in them. And so that's something that I have wanted to highlight through those projects and through the repertoire that I sing and that I program, just to kind of bring that to the forefront that has not been as much. So that's something that I personally love. And then as a woman in STEM, as you said, I think I come from actually a very STEM family. I'm the weird like musician that came out, as a lot of us identify. So for me, that has been something that has always been very supported by my family and by my friends, the going into the STEM realm, but just as equally as supported as the arts. So to me, it's this like beautiful symbiosis, bringing them together. And it's hard, certainly. It's kind of forging new pathways, but that's also what fuels me, is the forging new pathways, the being the woman in the room amongst not very many women, right? And representing that, because we should be representing that. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I know that you did a lot of studies in Austria, and I'm wondering how it was being, living, working, researching in Europe, and then kind of comparing that to the American system. I'm not sure how involved you were with like YAPs necessarily in Europe, but I know we have a lot of viewers who kind of want to know about working in Europe.
Yeah. So I did my Fulbright right out of my undergrad. So I graduated Oberlin. I went straight to Vienna for that Fulbright year, and I loved it. I mean, it felt like Europe is my second home. I identify both as European and American. So I loved living there. I loved, experiencing studying there. I artistically actually did quite a bit that year. I was also working on my research, but artistically, That was the year I was enrolled in the conservatory. I was around and involved in auditions as well for their kind of versions of young artist programs, or especially in Germany and Austria, open studios. So that's like the opera young artist program of the opera houses. And I never necessarily went down that. I mean, I always actually knew that that is a track I don't want to go down, but I was around all of my friends and colleagues right now, for example, who are there and performing, and I was involved in some auditions at the time. So I would say that for American singers, I think, who are interested in that, it is a bit of a different process than it is in the States. And I know from my friends and colleagues here, it's not, you really do need to kind of spend time and networking in the area where you're interested in going in Europe. And they have still very many specific requirements and things that they're looking for, that is not just your voice and your ability. Um, that is changing a little bit. And that can be artistically freeing for some, but it can also be stifling for others. So I would just really do your research, like do your homework, know what your intention is in going. And there's so many European programs that are wonderful options for many, but there are also some that some people feel disillusioned by, because they didn't necessarily realize that this would be in the fine print, or that they would be asked to do this, or that it would take them much longer to, you can't just go step off the plane and, like, for some perhaps audition and get it, but that's not the usual way, right? You have to spend a little bit more time. And they're still looking for a lot of, like, visual elements as well. The arts are well funded there, so they, and well funded by the public, so it is still kind of not catering to the public, but providing the public with what it wants, for better or for worse. So that's what I would say about that. Really do your homework, connect with people who have been there, and spend some time really percolating on why you want to go there and what your intention is, and learn the language, of course. I don't know, I don't say that first, but you should, before you go, as much as you can. Immersion is real, but learn the language, have facility with it, so that you don't feel alone and like an outsider, and you can communicate.
Great advice all around. I'm wondering if we can switch gears a little bit and talk about more about financing your career. And I'm wondering about grants. I see you have a Patreon. I'm kind of wondering how all these multiple income streams work for you.
Yeah. Grants are a big chunk of it, I would say, in academia, especially, and in arts organizations. Learning how to grant write, having facility with that is really important. I love writing, and grant writing too is, I find, kind of like a puzzle. So I enjoy that as well. Over the years, I think that I have to say that because I work as a grant writing tutor at McGill too. So anyway, but I love grant writing because you can, when you're thinking of a project, and we all have that, like, artistic, like, oh, I'm so excited, I have this idea and I want to do this, and I want to put this project on and do this. Grant writing is basically the vehicle for you to be able to do that, so that that idea lifts itself up off the couch onto the stage. So I love the figuring out the budgeting parts. I'm very detail oriented, so I love that. But it is definitely a practice skill. Like, and I would say that it's something that one should practice at, and it's kind of like auditioning as well. You are going to get way more no's than you will get yeses, but sometimes you will get that yes for that project that you're so looking forward to, and then that lifts off, takes off, you do the project, and then that leads to the next thing, and it's just kind of an exciting journey in that sense. So grants are kind of the biggest thing. There are lots of different ones that I have, mostly for research or for artistic work as well. But yes, and then I would say that, other income streams, I'm definitely a portfolio artist and career freelancer as well. So getting it from Patreon, especially for my soprano cello duo for pizzicanto, we have a lot of that going on, because that is a great income stream for freelance artists or ensembles, general concerts, general donations, as well as, teaching as I do, and within organizations, by, independently as well, and singing gigs. So yeah, it's definitely kind of pie making, right? Putting together different pieces of the pie. But grant writing for me has been a significant chunk of that.
Awesome. I'm wondering how you do everything without burnout. You are really, really successful, and I think we all need some self-care tips over here.
Yeah, good question. I'm making that face um, because I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's happened, and oftentimes I feel sometimes that I'm in a perpetual state of burnout, which is not what I would recommend to people. So, what I would say though, lately especially, I've been really working on this, and I think that it's very important to set aside time to work on this for whatever it means to you, self care, however that means for you. For me, as a person who is engaged in a lot of different things, doing a lot, I've had to really make prioritizing and being organized, which is comes natural to me, but prioritizing especially, which is a little bit harder. Number one, and knowing that prioritizing and digging a little deeper into like the self-worth things, self identification things, all of that stuff that sometimes we push to the side, to really dig deep and realize that sometimes prioritizing means prioritizing my health. And when I don't, that shows itself, rears its ugly head. So I'm also this year in the Global Leaders Institute for Innovation, which is an online Masters of Business Administration and Arts Entrepreneurship program, and that's been a lot to juggle alongside a PhD and a performing career and a teaching career and all of this stuff. And what I've realized actually through that, we've done a lot of exercises on being able to sustainably prioritize. And it's kind of like a spinning wheel, if you imagine it. Every day you wake up and the spinning wheel is going to land on kind of one thing that you focus on, and you give that the most attention, and then the other things you can touch around it, but you don't touch them, and you have to be okay with that. And then the next day you spin the spinning wheel and it lands on something else, if you have a career like mine and a life like mine that is multifaceted. So it actually, through interestingly, through an MBA program, I've learned a lot about self-care practices, because it's easy to just throw out self-care and say that, but it looks different for everybody. For me, it's about organizing things, writing things down in my planner, scheduling them out, and not necessarily like going and taking a bath with wine and stuff, that I do when I have put it in my schedule to do it, and when I feel that I can give myself the time and space and breathe out room for that. Otherwise, just doing it instead of doing something else that needs to be done is not my definition of self-care.
That's a really good point, and I think a lot of people can probably relate to that.
Yeah.
Do you have any hobbies outside of your careers? I know that you were previously a professional skater.
Yes. Yes, I try to do that as much as possible. That's also another definition of self-care for me now. I was in high school, I was a competitive figure skater, and then started coaching actually, and now have it as kind of just my love that I go to. I actually like winter. I'm that weird person, hence why I live in Montreal, I guess. But I love going to the rink and just feeling the ice underneath me, and remembering what it was like in my days of competing, but also now with that pressure off and just doing what I love to do. So figure skating, traveling, I love reading. Yeah.
That's
Piano. I actually love playing piano, interestingly. I guess that's something that a lot of singers I feel like don't, or like, oh, piano. I started as a pianist, so I love playing piano too.
and I'm sure that helps with your studio.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, to finish this wonderful, wonderful interview up, I'd love to finally ask you just what makes you feel successful, what brings you joy, and what makes you feel the most empowered.
Hmm. What makes me feel successful and brings me joy are connected, and I think the empowered as well. It's what makes me feel successful and brings me joy is curiosity and learning more and having fun through learning, to be honest. What makes me empowered is to pass on that learning to others, so through teaching or through performing or presenting as well. So those are kind of interconnected. But yeah, I think it's curiosity, learning more, and figuring things out and connecting with others through that.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting with me, Theodora.
Oh, thanks. It was lovely, really. Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day, and thank you for being our Empowered Musician of the Month.
Thank you.